Act 3, whack-a-mom. The premise of therapy is often to return to the scene of a crime called your childhood. To go there, look around, gather evidence, take names, and try to make sense of what happened so you can get on with your life. This next story from Starlee Kine is about a group of people trying to do that using very unusual tools for the job. Starlee's been on our show many times, most notably at the height of a breakup, seeking advice from Phil Collins. Yeah. For the last couple of years, now and then, Starlee has done these shows with artist Arthur Jones in little clubs where she writes the story and then Arthur illustrates using a medium that has often been neglected by artists, the medium of Post-it notes. Please welcome Starlee Kine.
Growing up, the closest model I had to compare my mom to was Pepe Le Pew. The cartoon might as well have been a documentary. My mom was a skunk, and I was a cat being smothered by her love. She was more than just overprotective. So convinced was my mom that I was at every moment in constant danger of death. She wouldn't even let me ride the school bus unless it was a special occasion, like my birthday. And then, on those days, she'd still drive along beside it the whole way, like my own personal security detail. Paradoxically, and this doesn't seem like a combination that should even be possible, but she also neglected me and my sister. She started leading a secret double life that we barely knew about. When I was 28, I discovered my mom had forged my signature and used it to take out loans, credit cards, phone lines, gym memberships, all totaling about $70,000 worth of debt in my name. In a startling twist, my mom, the skunk, had stolen the identity of the cat. The overprotective parent produces an entitled yet anxiety-ridden adult who's afraid of the world. The neglectful parent produces a self-sufficient yet self-loathing adult with abandonment issues. The overprotective parent, combined with the neglectful parent, produces me. And so I came to the Hoffman Institute to get fixed. The Hoffman Institute is a rundown little spa in Napa Valley devoted entirely to the Hoffman process. The process, when first introduced in the 1960s, was originally a 6-month-long self-help retreat. But in the intervening decades, it's now been whittled down to 8 days. 8 days to undo a lifetime of damage, the exact same amount of time it takes to go on a cruise. Except on this trip, you're hoping your baggage does get lost. When I arrived at the Institute, I was ushered into a room filled with folding chairs, maybe 30 people, coffee and pastries in the back. Pillows were arranged in rows on the floor. We were to imagine these pillows were our moms and our dads. The premise behind the Hoffman process is the same as a lot of pop psychology, that we've all been damaged by our parents. They pass on patterns to us that we hate, but also can't seem to shake. Patterns so ingrained that the only way to rid ourselves of them is to rid ourselves of our parents. By killing them. For real. Well, not for real, more like pretend for real. Next to each pillow was a pair of workman gloves, 2 foam knee pads, and a plastic yellow wiffle ball bat. The bat wasn't for merely bashing our parents. It was for killing them dead. The gloves were so we wouldn't break our hands while killing our parents. The knee pads were so we wouldn't wear out our jeans while killing our parents. On the count of 3, the teacher said, 1, we pulled on our gloves. 2, we raised our bats over our heads. 3, it was all just incredibly awkward. No one knew where to place their hands on the bat. I had heard about the parent killing thing before I arrived, but I figured it was going to come much, much later, like the grand finale. 1 or 2 people gave their pillows a tentative little tap with their bats. No one looked like they felt up for the job, including the pillows. They just laid there. It felt like the equivalent of walking into the furniture showroom at Macy's and shouting, "I didn't ask to be born," at the first couch you saw. I realize this all sounds so crazy, but Hoffman is established and revered, and not just in the world of self-help. A lot of people say it's the only place that has helped them. But if anything, the bats just felt like a cheap gimmick, a way of standing out from the other programs. I headed to my room grumpily that night, the sight of the pillow on my bed annoying me all over again. Much to my surprise, though, things really did pick up the next morning. The teachers told us to stand up one by one and talk about the pain that had brought us here. Fiona said she was lonely. Mel said she just felt so lost. Jimmy, the oncologist from Chicago, think Wilson on House, said he was feeling out of touch with his feelings. A lot of the men said that, actually. One massive man in cowboy boots named Kenneth stood up, just let out a long, shivery breath, and then sat back down again. We all understood what he meant. It was like an AA meeting without the A. Or the other A, come to think of it. There's a surprising comfort in realizing that your most personal thoughts and hang-ups are completely banal, shared by everyone, not special in any way. We did this one exercise where we had to look in each other's eyes for incrementally longer periods of time. At first, it's impossible not to laugh and make faces. It feels so dangerous. But then slowly you let your face relax and allow yourself to look at the other person, and then you're sunk. You could go all day. You never want to talk again. Their gaze is keeping you standing, and if you look away, you'll collapse. It was with this new rush of compassion and understanding that we pulled on our gloves. We picked up our bats. On the count of 3, the teacher said, "You will kill your mom." This time, everyone let loose. Nancy, an old lady who was 80 years old, alternated between hitting with her bat and with her cane. There was a girl there on crutches, who everyone called the girl on crutches, even to her face. She just began bawling her eyes out. We bashed for 8 hours straight. Really, 8 hours, stopping only for a quick lunch and a chance to rest our sore shoulders and blistered hands. Then it was back to work. The teachers would walk around the room, supervising our progress, egging us on. Before long, the bashing seemed as normal as anything else. By the end of the day, we were like factory workers chit-chatting on the job. "So, girl on crutches," I asked a girl on crutches. "Which part of, bam, San Francisco are you from?" The bashing got even more intense when we switched from matricide to patricide. Whereas it had felt sad and inappropriate to kill our mothers, it felt fun to kill our dads. We all just went nuts. Pillow stuffing flew through the air. The handsome bachelor of the group, Chris, had to be pulled from his dad's corpse, sobbing like Ricky Schroeder in The Champ. Maybe it's because dads, by nature, feel stronger and bigger and thus more able to take a punch. But my dad is in his 70s. He sounds tired when we talk on the phone. He recently tried Thai food for the first time, and when I went home last, he gave me a play-by-play of the experience when we walked his dog around the block. My teachers were so convinced that I was more mad at my dad than my mom because he let her get away with so much. At this, I snorted. I dismissed them as hacks. I did a spit take, and then when that didn't feel sufficient enough to express my disbelief, I spit took again. I can't remember a time when I haven't taken my dad's side. It was the earliest part of my identity that I was sure of, before I figured out where I stood politically or even whether I liked boys or girls. When I was born, first I cried, and then I leapt to my father's defense. And yet, I bashed my dad's pillow so much harder than I had my mom. I yelled at the pillow, out loud, and when I caught myself doing so, I felt an embarrassing lack of self-consciousness. And it shocked me how much faster I swung, as though the bat was an automatic extension of my quickened pulse. When I first got to Hoffman, I was a jumpy mess. My teachers tried to have an intervention with me about my eternally shaky knees. By the end, though, it was different. I felt different. For one thing, I could not stop hugging people. Like, they'd be warming up their oatmeal in the microwave, and I would just barrel into them. We had a hugging lesson one day where we had to rotate around the room as though we were at a square dance. and I was like a little gnome running up people's chests and jumping into their open arms, and I couldn't turn it off. My teachers acted all smug about it, like they were responsible. But really, they did not have much to do with it. And more importantly, it had very little to do with killing my parents or the bashing in any way. It had much more to do with this. At Hoffman, I was ridiculously popular. More so than I've ever been in my life. I mean, I've had my moments. Third grade, a particularly triumphant junior high Sadie Hawkins dance. But honestly, nothing compared to this. Every joke I told landed perfectly. I was always on, but not in an obnoxious way, in an adorable way. Sinatra had Vegas, Steve Harvey has the Apollo, and I have Hoffman. But it wasn't just me. Everyone there felt accepted in some way. There was this guy there, a shoe salesman named Doug, who'd been dropped on his head as a baby and whose parents never looked at him the same again. He was alienated in his life until Hoffman. I just feel so good here, he told me in the parking lot, taking impossibly long drags on his cigarette. Like I totally fit in, and I'm terrified to go home. At home, I'm invisible. Hoffman gave us our very own wiffle ball bat to take home with us. Mine wouldn't fit in my suitcase, so I had to carry it with me on the plane. I laid it gingerly on the security conveyor belt and explained patiently to the guards that I'd used it to kill my parents. After they had searched my luggage thoroughly, I thanked them for doing such a good job, drunk on benevolence and goodwill. It lasted all of 5 hours, until I stepped into my apartment and saw the clutter and the stack of mail that was all bills. 3 days later, I was already screening calls from my fellow Hoffman graduates, letting it go to voicemail every time. They had become just like family. Thank you.
Starlee Kine. A version of Starlee's story will appear in the book that she's writing about the self-help movement called It Is Your Fault. Drawings by Arthur Jones.